What's up, everybody? This is Len speaking from the restaurant in Armenia Lodge, straight talk from the homeland. I've just been out in the field digging, so I'm not going to get all prettied up for you. I'm going to be talking about, dirty work. That dirty work is all about construction. So if you're thinking about doing construction in Armenia, I suppose you'd probably better listen to this, or even better have a talk to us. As you can probably imagine, construction in a place like Armenia is its challenges. I'm going to read you a list of all sorts of things that we came across. There's probably a lot more, and I'm not going to spend 15 minutes on a video. I'll just touch on these subjects, but it'll just give you some idea. So to start with, Armenia has significant problems with their cadastral service, the charting of who owns what property. You can't find an electronic map with who owns what, and indeed people here in the rural area particularly, they have no idea what property they own. There's no boundary pegs. It's a nightmare. You want to try and buy property? You can spend a couple of years trying to figure out who owns what, and trying to get all the permissions from all the people who think that they own. It's nightmare. So the cadastral service is a disaster. I understand the government's trying to improve it, but the cadastral service is involved in all sorts of things they shouldn't be, like when the property changes use. That's done normally in the West in a local municipality, not cadastral services, but there you've got to go and submit your changes, and it takes forever. So that's a problem. Notaries are also a nightmare because they seem to have some power, They'll sit on paperwork for weeks and weeks. The banks, what can I say? They're mainly oligarch institutions still. They take a month to get a mortgage if you want one. Even if you only want 10% mortgage, which is ridiculous, isn't it? They'll want a guarantor, and interest rates that are probably double that of the West. So if you then get into the architects, oh my gosh, we've got to the point where we're going to get an architect. We bought the land. We had problems with architects telling us what we should be doing, you should be putting stairs in. No, I want a ramp because people have bags and there are disabled people. No, you should put in stairs, and not listening. So we had to fire a couple of architects. I wanted to put an observatory on the top of this building, and I will do so, but for them, it looks like a church, so I'm not going to take your job. It's okay. So the architects are pretty stubborn. They're stuck in their ways. If you want your plan, you have to insist on what you want, and be pretty firm about it. Also, when we've had our final plans done, the architect still made a few stuff up, so we had the builder sign and stamp yes, you must always get a stamp, a document which confirmed that they understood the corrections, even in the so-called final plan. Of course, that document was never properly circulated to the actual people building, and we had to print it off ourselves and give it to the builders. We don't have proper supervision here. A so-called brigadier comes along and has a beer or two and has a jolly good laugh, but doesn't properly supervise. So we ended up supervising most of it ourselves. And for that matter, safety. Safety is non-existent here. We have people standing on 12-metre long girders with a girder swinging above them, trying to build a bridge with no safety helmets, not even any gloves, and not even any ropes holding that girder. It's unbelievable. I found, and I might post at the end, an orange object through my security cameras on the ground, and I wondered what it was one day, and I found it was a safety helmet put on the ground with nails on it. So that's what they use safety helmets for. The builders don't read plans, they don't follow instructions. They're basically hands-on ad hoc people. That's what you're dealing with. So if you're dealing with construction, you got to search long and hard for a good builder, and it's not always the case that the local recommendations are going to help you, because seriously, people here in Armenia, they actually don't know proper ways of doing things, most of them anyway. So it's the blind leading the blind in most cases. We found that the workers they're divided into certain rooms. So Johnny does room A, and David does room B. And David doesn't do room A, even though Johnny's gone on holiday or gone sick or something like that, and there's no flexibility like that. I mean, the work divisions are amazing. So they work by the square metre when they're doing the internal furnishing. It's unbelievable, not by the hour. So what happened to us is not only they're doing work by the square metre, so they actually don't know how much they're going to get paid until they measure it out with tape. So I might post a video with this to show you the measuring around corners as to how many square metres rather than by the hour. They did that after they did the work. Believe it or not, after rather than before, so that they didn't agree on a set plan as to what the price would be. So all sorts of nightmares after it. Basic stuff like they take the breeze box, the concrete blocks, and they don't fill them properly. They stick them in a sort of unprofessional manner. And I wondered why in the beginning. How is it possible for builders to do this? They don't have them lined up correctly and things like that. And it turns out that they do that because then they do about 5 layers of they call gudge, which is a primitive thing looks like mud, and plaster, and about 5 layers. It's unbelievable, one layer after another. They don't use jibbing except for anything on the ceiling. So in other words, whatever they do with the blocks, they think they can cover it up. So we end up, and we want to put a TV in, right? So we put a bracket on the wall, and you drill, and there's nothing solid there. There's holes that are hidden by these layers. It's just nightmare. And I think this gudge thing comes from former Soviet Union, and they've just not changed. We had problems with the builder using GPS for another building, as if GPS, unless it's corrected, GPS is accurate enough. GPS is not accurate within 4 meters, I think it is, unless you have a special surveying correction device which is correcting the signals from satellites. So they built, of course, 1 meter over our boundary, and it's caused all sorts of problems. Material disappears. That happens overseas too, of course, but because they don't record things accurately, and people come and go from work sites unless it's unusual, you've got to watch everything. Unfortunately, this might be the first Christian nation, but unfortunately there's not many Christians here. The boundaries aren't marked by boundary pegs, so I guess there's going to be mistakes made anyway. Throwing rubbish everywhere. They do not clean up. We had to walk around the building cleaning up, and sort of embarrassed them in doing so they sort of got a little bit better after we did that. But I mean, it's just the same attitude to throwing rubbish around this beautiful country that's extended into the construction site. So there's so many dangerous things floating around, pieces of metal and all sorts of things. I was very unhappy about that. And by the way, it's not just our builders. It's on all the sites that we saw. I should mention that if you want to import something, because it's hard to get things, especially in the rural area where we are, Those rural areas, it's going to cost you a lot more to get stuff. I mean, Yerevan's the centre of the universe, so they add everything they can onto the transport costs. But for people that come in this direction and want to import something, like we wanted to import a lift, right? We couldn't get anything more than a Russian lift, can you believe it? Without the sort of safety standards that we would expect. When we imported it, we had so many problems with the customs. I mean, they just into torture. 2 days of explaining how we got the lift from Poti in Georgia to Yerevan in Armenia. The Chinese documents, they say it's going by sea freight to Poti. So how is it possible it came to Yerevan? So as far as we were concerned, it's just like a no-brainer. But these guys, they can't. They're not allowed to have any discretion. No, because they might be corrupt. So that's how close corruption is to the surface, and it's got to go to senior officers. We had to get Enterprise Armenia involved to try and get some common sense going there. Enterprise Armenia reports directly to the PM. So, if you're going to invest in Armenia, and you should, because there are plenty of positive opportunities here, no question about it, you need to speak to others. We're more than happy to help if we can. You need to supervise the work as much as you can, if not yourself, but by others you trust. You need to make sure that things are as you expect, and don't take excuses for particular behaviour or outcomes. I think the problem here is that they've been so isolated for so long that they believe that they should continue doing things like this, but they don't need to be isolated if they just listen to the diaspora. Plenty of builders in the diaspora building some pretty amazing buildings. Anyway, we're here. We built this lodge, and it's pretty good considering all the challenges, and we hope that you have the opportunity to come here and see for yourself at some stage. We still struggling with the so-called final act, which is the final building approval. And why is that? Well, here's a little insight into some bureaucracy. Our plans include some pictures of some of the external, like the car park, and gardens, of course, artists' impressions, and they won't give us the final act until we beautify the exterior. Nothing to do with the building itself. I suspect somebody's expecting some extra payment myself. However, that's the way things work sometimes in countries like this. So be prepared for surprises. This video won't have all the problems, but hopefully it's given you a good insight in this straight talk from the homeland.